Vaudeville held an obvious allure for Corbett in an era when boxing purses were hard to arrange and harder to collect. Corbett began his stage career by sparring for a round or two, but quickly discovered that, unlike most pugs, he could impersonate an actor. The heavyweight champion toured for 3 years in a stage vehicle called Gentleman Jack, in which he played a down-on-his-luck Princeton graduate who is forced to make a living as a boxing instructor. The 5-act melodrama climaxed with Jack's prize fight against his villainous arch-rival at Exhibition Stadium in New Orleans, the venue where, coincidentally of course, Corbett had knocked out Sullivan. In 1901, even though he had lost the heavyweight crown to Bob Fitzsimmons and a title bout to Jim Jeffries, Corbett's popularity remained undimmed. The fighter's finances, on the other hand, were being pummeled. His saloon, Corbett's bar and pool room at Broadway and 34th Street, was briefly menaced by the arrival of hatchet-wielding Carrie Nation in New York, just a few weeks after she was released from jail in Wichita. As Corbett melodramatically wailed to the Morning Telegraph, "Ruin my beautiful place, destroy the mahogany counter and real oak tables, surely Mrs. Nation will not be so cruel." Corbett then lost $12,000, more than $300,000 today, in the stock market as speculators whipsawed his investment in American steel. In stand-up guy fashion, Corbett blamed himself for panicking when he was hit with a margin call. As he ruefully told the papers, "Had I held on, I would have retrieved my loss at least in part." But Corbett proudly stood his ground when the "Which Side Are You On, Boys" labor wars hit vaudeville. It started when the dominant Orpheum and Keith circuits attempted to eliminate the independent agents who negotiated salaries and touring schedules for the performers. Instead, the impresarios who ran big-time vaudeville decreed that all bookings must be handled in-house by their own version of a company union, the Association of Vaudeville Managers, which charged performers a 5% commission for the privilege of working. Angry vaudevillians rallied around their fraternal organization called the White Rats, inspired by a similar English group known as the Water Rats, which tried to become the Wobblies of the Footlights. Refusing to sign contracts that included the hated 5% fee, the White Rats organized star-studded benefits to support their walkout. The inaugural fundraiser in New York at the 4,000-seat Academy of Music on 14th Street in February 1901 featured 30 of the top names in vaudeville, including Maurice Barrymore, the first of the theatrical Barrymores, DeWolf Hopper, famed for his rendition of Casey at the Bat, the comic duo of Weber and Fields, whose specialty was knockabout sketches, and Corbett. The ex-champ, a stalwart of the White Rats, had in recent years turned himself into an adroit monologuist, mixing self-deprecating recollections of his famous fights with endearing Irish family humor. But the great vaudeville strike of 1901 fizzled as show business titans like B.F. Keith and Edward Albee held firm. By the fall of 1901, the remaining White Rats, with Gentleman Jim in the forefront, were reduced to hard cheese rations. Blacklisted on the major vaudeville circuits, Corbett had nowhere to tour. Instead, during the spring and early summer of 1902, he mostly hung around his saloon, often offering free food and drinks to down-at-the-heels White Rats. Gentleman Jim Corbett, the most popular sporting figure in America, was at liberty. In 1902, Freeman Bernstein was also at liberty. He had escaped Albany and his dying Hudson River amusement park one step ahead of his many creditors. For a man of Freeman's ambitions, who had been chafing over living with his family in a tenement on River Street in Troy, the inevitable next stop was down the river to the world of big-time vaudeville in Manhattan. But instead of the lights from the necklace of theaters and music halls stretching from Union Square to 42nd Street, Freeman had to settle for a solitary candle at Bergen Point. That is, Bergen Point in Bayonne, New Jersey. As the New York-based Morning Telegraph wrote in 1902, "Washington Park, Bergen Point, is about the last place one would pick out